The MP-IDSA Delhi Defence Dialogue moved forward with two more voices who sit at the heart of India's defence industrial transformation. First came Shri Sanjeev Kumar, Secretary of Defence Production, whose voice was measured, meticulous, and refreshingly candid. He broke down the complexity of self-reliance and new age technology. He broke down the complexity of self-reliance and new age technology. He detailed how India's defense manufacturing ecosystem has grown in confidence, capability, and ambition, from indigenous procurement priorities to ecosystem wide reforms that encourage startups, young innovators, and advanced technology developers. But he also highlighted what still holds us back: the pace of procurement, the need for better data sharing doctrines, and the urgency of space based capabilities, as well as the reality that today's industry partners are young, impatient, creative, and will not wait for slow systems to catch up. His words offered a rare balance of achievements and accountability, progress acknowledged, gaps accepted, and a roadmap for how India must adapt if it wants to lead in AI, quantum, sensors, autonomous systems, and modern defense manufacturing. Together, the perspective of Baba Kalyani and Shri Sanjeev Kumar formed a powerful arc: industry and policy, experience and execution, ambition and realism, aligned towards one goal and commands its own destiny. Then stepped in Baba Kalyani, the force behind Bharat Forge, a pioneer of Indian manufacturing and a symbol of what private industry can accomplish when ambition meets engineering. His message was grounded, honest, and unapologetically practical. He spoke of self-reliance not as a slogan, but as a journey, one built on design ownership, supply chain control, advanced materials, engines, sensors, semiconductors, and the courage to close gaps that have remained open for decades. He reminded us that the world of new age technologies has AI, quantum, autonomous systems, and space based capabilities is evolving at a pace where hesitation is defeat, and that India must leapfrog not by rhetoric but by investing in core science, deeper research and development, and faster decision making that matches the speed of innovation. It was the voice of an industrial strategist who has seen India rise, stumble, and rise again, and knows exactly what it will take to get to the next level. Now let's revisit those defining moments, from the strategic clarity of Sri Sanjeev Kumar to the industrial vision of Baba Kalyani, as India charts the future of self-reliance and next generation defense technology.
Thank you very much, Mr. Raj Chengappa. In fact, I was telling him that when I heard his name and his brief CV, that who should be moderating whom. And after listening to his opening remarks, I'm again thinking, where do I am standing and why I am standing? Very uh, so thank you very much, Itsa, for inviting me here. Ambassador Chinoy, really grateful to you for being here. Not because I was eager to deliver any address. Topic is very, very difficult. In fact, I'm finding very difficult to even streamline my thoughts. I'm pleased to be here because it's really, really a very forward-looking subject. And whatever piece of information, knowledge one can gain, it would be useful individually and also collectively. We also have amongst us retired Chief of Air Staff, Mr. Vivek Chaudhary, and all knowledgeable person in this sector. Ladies and gentlemen, the topic on which I am supposed to speak is self-reliance and new age technology. So in fact, it can be broken into two parts. One is self-reliance, another is new age technology. So just to start speaking something about that, as I was saying, that very difficult topic and difficult to really organize your thought on such a wide and deep topic, which still is unraveling itself at a breathtaking speed. It's like a child when I used to sleep on the rooftop in Western one of the town in Western UP during summer and used to see stars and then start thinking. Then thoughts used to just overwhelm that where does it end? Where does it go? What it is indicating. Similarly, is this newest technology, where it begins, what all it comprise of, where would it take us, what are the possibilities, and then somehow at least I get overwhelmed. I don't get to see anything with any greater clarity that how it is going to unravel itself. So how to speak on such a topic? So I will try to do whatever best I can do, would put my confusion in my mind in front of you. In fact, in last 10, 11 years, uh, uh, our country has done really great job. In comparative terms, in absolute term, nothing is great. In comparative terms, in defense production, indigenous defense production. Not only numbers, which are there themselves to tell their story, from 46,000 crore in 14-15 to 1 lakh 51,000 crore more in 24-25, along with export growing from almost 700 crore to around 2,400 crore. Apart from these numbers, the other stories which we can see in confidence of our defense industrial ecosystem and also our armed forces in that defense industries manufacturing ecosystem, we can see that confidence. It is growing. Still, we are one of the largest importer of the platforms, arms, ammunition, but now we started believing that we would be reaching very soon where we intend to reach. So how this transformation, if I can use the word transformation, took in last 10, 11 years, I won't waste any of your time. All of you understand, but foremost, and probably the single most reason is taking a very hard policy decision that starting from 1819 or 1920 or onwards, that 75% of our defense acquisition budget would go towards purchases from indigenous sources. So if one start dissecting that particular uh, catchword, indigenous sources, so there would be multiple thread of stories, but overall stories is that government of India, armed forces, Ministry of Defense, is going to prefer something which is indigenous, which is a very, very positive statement, positive intent and positive policy statement which government made, and which, of course, then attracted people who want to put their resources, who have interest in coming in this sector, and then started organizing themselves to put their financial resource or their human resource. And that, in my opinion, was the single most reason of whatever we could achieve. Have we reached to the level where we can say self-reliance? Of course not. As I just said, that we are still one of the biggest importer, even in the traditional arms and ammunition. So we are here talking about self-reliance in new age technology. So does that mean, is it premature to talk about self-reliance in new age technology? Uh, Not, probably not. As Mr. Changappa also in his opening profound statement made that comment. It is not premature. Rather, it is the right time to talk about. So first we need to understand exactly what is self-reliance is. So self-reliance can mean different thing to different people in the different context. But the way our Honorable Prime Minister in many communication to the public at large and in conversation with the armed forces and policymaker in this sector has very clearly brought out self-reliance means that we become master of our destiny. We don't remain dependent in a very significant manner on others. Others may include any other country, so that we can decide what we would be doing in future about our preparedness for any eventuality wherever it comes. So means that we should have total control on our equipments, our software, hardware, supply chain, and we should not be found wanting whenever it is required to upscale, to integrate horizontally or vertically across the services, within the services, even beyond the services. That means self-reliance. Uh, then, of course, different version of this would be practiced as tactical move or as a fait accompli or as a given situation. Then, but clarity should be there that the ultimate objective of us is to reach to that level. There, we have total control over things which we would be using in adversarial situation whenever or wherever it happens. Having understood that term self-reliance, then we also need to then conclude that or draw a conclusion that the weapon system which we are going to use in future should be indigenously designed, and the design should be 100% owned by us, and it should allow us to integrate, scale up the manner in whatever manner we want to play with that. And we should also have control over supply chain of material, component, subcomponent, assemblies, sub-assemblies. Doesn't mean that everything should be manufactured within the country, because in the globalized world, it neither desirable, may not be desirable, not maybe possible. But what does it mean? That we should have total visibility and control. Whenever we need to, as I'm repeatedly saying, scale up, we should be able to do it without any hindrances. Now I come to the word technologies. Again, it's a word which can be defined in many manners. The one simple manner is something which allow us to make life simple uh, using the equipments or the things which we can create by using the technology. So new age technology, is it something new, or is it just every decade or every 20 or 30 years, whenever new thing come, then we could have called it new age technology? Was that case that the technology was more, has become somehow important now? Was it not important earlier? So I'm not a student of military warfare, neither I'm a student of history, but what I understand, whatever bits and pieces I have read, is that technology was always a very prominent factor right from medieval period, or maybe from the period of ancient times. Whenever we try to read Mahabharata, then we see that Karan got some arm from Indra, and in lieu of his kavach and kundal, and that arm was something must be very, very highly technologically advanced arm vis-a-vis whatever was available amongst the other peers at that time. And of course, Arjun had equally good or equally competent arms. So what I'm trying to say, that even in medieval period, the outcomes of the war were decided by, not in lesser measure by technology, equally by the leadership, the strategic leadership which made the difference, and also whole of the society efforts. These factors must have played role always. So the technology would always play an important role in 17s and 80s, when semiconductor or chips became important in the arms, uh, got more and more integrated in the arms to increase the precision and accuracy of the prevailing arm. Then at that time, it must be a new dawn, new technology era. Similarly is now. But there is something critically different which all of us know. Critically different is the speed at which happening and the dimension in which happening. It is happening in multi dimensions, or it is happening at a very, very high speed. That's why we probably can say it's a totally different era of advent of technology, and that's why it requires huge, humongous efforts to understand this, to calibrate it, and integrate it within our own systems, not only in ARM system, but also in our uh, management systems. So if I go back again to the traditional arms and systems, we still have critical gaps where we are still struggling to meet those gaps. Some of the gaps are known. I mean, most of the gaps are known. Why some of the gaps to most of us? This is in the engine, jet engine technology, even the engine technology for our ships and warships, and also for the land system. Critical gaps in material, critical gaps in semiconductor, critical gaps in sensor, etc., etc. So those gaps still remain in the traditional systems. And when we talk about new age technology, what type of technology we are talking about? Mr. Chengappa spoke artificial intelligence, machine language or machine learning, whatever we say, AI, ML, and uh, data, huge data collection, sensors, communication, integration of data which is coming from the sensor, doing the computing using supercomputer at a very high speed and distributing those results to the systems which are in the field, connecting all those systems, centralizing them. That's for network warfare or network computing, what particular name which we all use. I'm not very familiar with many of those names. Of conceptually, I understand that concept is very clear, that we have uh, made huge, the world has made huge advancement in terms of capturing the data. That is the sensors, large types of sensors have been developed which can be deployed across the platform within the, let's say, at the land, in the sea, in the sky, in the air, even the space. And all these sensors becoming day and night, but better than yesterday, better than what it was yesterday or what it was a few hours ago or few days ago. And we are capturing huge lot of data. That data is getting translated and transferred to a certain place. And that certain place has got huge computing capability or should have huge computing capability. And it also has got the historic data. Then that capability analyze that data on the basis of historic data on its own, which we call AI, or assisted by the human or decided by the human, take certain decisions. Those decisions are communicated to every type of systems which are there, every type of equipment which are there in the field to do what we intend to do. So that's type of system we are talking about. And here we are talking about advancement in technology, advancement in sensor, advancement in computation, advancement in AI, advancement in communicating using quantum communication or quantum computing. All those things are loosely we can call new age technology. As I said, that it's stargazing and getting confused what all can be called new age technology. Typically, whatever was not there yesterday, whatever can come today is new age technology. So here, do we have better chance to become self-reliant? That is the question, which is a central question to ask. I feel yes. I mean, I think most of us would be feeling yes, because two, three things which distinguish these new age technologies is that learning curve may not be that much steep as it was in the old system, where the manufacturing and advanced manufacturing was the core, was the heart of the matter. Here, of course, manufacturing would be important, equally important, if not more. But something else would be also very, very important, equally important. That is our capability to create software, to capability to understand, capability to create algorithms. And there, traditionally, we have been very good. Mathematics of our Indian people has been traditionally very good, and we have done quite better in comparison to other traditional ways, traditional systems in this area. So we should be able to do it better here. Second, even within the world, the learning curve in terms of time is not so steep. In terms of acquiring knowledge might be steep, but in terms of the time taken by the people who enter in this field is not so steep. It may be because of many various reasons, but here also we can believe that Indians, we as a society and also as a system, would be able to cover the gap faster. Third and most important, in my opinion, is most of these technologies are getting created in the civil domain first, which was unlike the case in erstwhile military technologies. And civil domain, being civil domain, is much more open, and many of these technologies are many of these technologies. See, I would use the word technology only. Are getting created by a large number of civilians engaged in various aspects of the civilian working and using the open source. And they are very open about it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe something this big power has concealed within themselves and hasn't made it very open to rest of us. But whatever we know that AI, ML, quantum computing, and all these things are getting used in civilian domain very effectively. Rather, they are leading, and now the military would be following them, which was unlike the case in 70s, 80s when the things were getting developed first in military technology domain and then getting copied in civil. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I feel, and that gives us good chance to cover the gap faster. So we have this opportunity to leapfrog, if we can use this word. Though leapfrogging is never easy, it won't be easy here also. Uh, as a catchword, it might sound very, very good, but leapfrogging without having good base won't be possible. So we have to have good base here also. And that we need to create, and it will require good amount of resources to be spent on core technology, on basic science, basic technology here. And that's where we should all be ready to spend money in. We have certain initiative. DRDO is doing great job. They have also got their technology development fund, where they nurture the technology up to the TRL level 4 or 5, as I've been told. And then we have IDEX program, which takes up it further. Then we have many civilian department of science and technology, and other department, Anusandhan Fund, which has been recently launched, where it can fund this type of technology. We have got quantum computing mission, as Mr. Chengappa spoke about. So we have many such parallel initiative in the civil domain which can come and dovetail their know-how, their knowledge, their advancement, and bring it here for some useful purpose in the military domain. But the money which we are right now putting in is too small, at least directly, which the way we are putting in. IDEX is a scheme which is spent around 200 to 50 crore per annum, not more than that, and so might be the TDF in the same range. But would that be adequate? My heart says no. Mind still I'm not able to understand the requirement, but heart says probably it won't be good enough. So we have to find out resources to put money in this area of work, which can make a change, which can make a difference, not only for the future equipment, but also the longevity and efficiency of the equipment which are already in our possession. It can increase their longevity and also the efficacy and efficiency. That's why we need to put our money in understanding more on AI, quantum technology, quantum computing, sensors, autonomous equipment, swarm, etc., and do experiment at various level by spending money. Another clear requirement is of data. And there, the armed force has to really find out a doctrine, develop a doctrine where they can seamlessly share data with our innovator. Because wherever, in a limited manner, we have interacted with the people from the pool of the IDEX winner, one of the bottleneck which has been cited is lack of data. Because all of these things would work when they have some good data on which they can carry out their experimentation and perfect the model on which they are right now working. And there is a difficulty that what type of data to be shared, when to be shared, in which form to be shared. That doctrine need to be developed with much, much more clarity, and that data should be started to be shared. Otherwise, whatever we will develop will not be perfected in our own Indian conditions, or our it won't probably meet fully and efficiently our own requirement. So there, I think in CDS office, some group is working, as I've been told, not very clearly, but whatever I could understood in interaction, and I'm sure they understand the urgency and need of this much better than any of us, and would come out faster and a policy, and also start sharing data proactively with, if not all, at least with chosen vendors or chosen institute, so that they can start working. Another area where we would need to put our efforts would be use of space more effectively, because it's an area where there's not too much of crowding happening. Maybe it would happen soon. So we also have certain advantage. We have proven competency in sending satellites to the space. Now probably what we need to work is developing good, competent payloads which can do the required work using those satellites, and also start sending many more and much more competent satellite in the sky. Other characteristic which I would like to mention, then I would finish, is that here the type of vendors which we would be dealing as a purchaser, their characteristic would be different than what they were in the past. Typically, I see them young, energetic, slightly impatient, and not very formal in their approach. Type of people who have other options. All these words are very important in my opinion. Young, energetic, not so much patience, not so much formal, and also have other options. So what it tells me is that we have to be quite fast in our reaction, in our response. We have to probably break hierarchy when we work with them. We might have to break our formal structures also to work with them. And we have to be very quick in our decision making. Typically, in our decisions, when we go for acquisition of system, it takes quite a lot of time. And these youngsters either may not have patience, or may not have deep pockets, money, or may have other options, better options to go in the civilian market to do work. So we might have to be much more faster than in the past. So we might have to develop doctrine paradigms of testing faster, responding faster, and converting some projects or converting projects into the purchase order much faster, so that all these youngsters can sustain their livelihood along with their fellow entrepreneurs, scientists who are working with them. That's what a change in our approach, change in our procedures would be required. And not only for this purpose, but also for other purpose. The technology itself is changing so fast. We have seen in the case in the past. I mean, my colleagues on the armed force must agree with me that many times the purchase or the procurement started with a conception of a system, and when it took 4 or 5 years, the particular type of system itself underwent change. Like, just to give an example, something was conceived on the basis of decentralized computing. By the time it resulted into the work order, decentralized computing became a method of past, and centralized computing became method of today. Right now, again, we are moving towards decentralized computing. So the technology keeps on changing so fast that if we don't decide fast, then we might end up with risk of something which is obsolete, which is not very useful, or something which is suboptimal than what is available in the market. So I would end my random thoughts here, as I said, that not very structured. So thank you very much for listening. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Sanjeev Kumar. I was really impressed by your pragmatic approach. This is a very complex subject. I think you broke it down very nicely into saying what's self-reliance and what's technology, and then defining each of these and the strides we've made on it, and also looking at some of the key areas that you've talked about: space, data, computing, all of these areas that we need to develop both our self-reliance and technology in. And I also like the last part that you talked about, which was the vendors and us improving the speed of our decision making. I guess that would include L1 as well, whether that is still a criteria or not. That's been the common heartburn of a lot of people. But we are almost out of time, and I'm just taking the privilege of, and as the moderator, to ask you one question, which I thought would sum up some of the experience that you have. You have a vast experience on a lot of subjects, but looking at the vast industrial background that you had, apart from the fact that managing various things, one of the things that struck me when you were talking about the engines, the fact that we don't have cutting edge engines to power our aircraft, our tanks. Some of them have been developed, even our cars. I mean, that's one of the things that India seems to lack. I think the Prime Minister mentioned that in his Independence Day speech, that it's about time we did a jet engine. Now we've come up with, I think you were probably integral in that whole process of negotiations with Safran and to deliver and give us not only the technology, but also a lot of the know-how and everything else to develop a jet engine. If you take a look, I don't know how much of that you can talk about, because GE is also there, but they're not giving us the full technology for that. I think they went up to 80%, but that 20% was very critical. And we may not be able to make that in India in terms of that mastery over the GE 404 or 414 that we're getting. So if you take a look at this industrial complex that we need to set up, and that's why I wanted you to come in on this. What is it that we need to do in the next 4 or 5 years so that you have a military industrial complex that can catch up with this rapid rate, able to take new technologies, absorb it, and deliver to the nation? Keep the self-reliance in mind. We're not expecting all our companies to be overnight top stars that are there. What would be the right balance, you feel?
In fact, we have made the right beginning. When we are saying that we would be giving priority, number one priority to the equipment which are developed in India, designed in India, in fact, and developed and manufactured in India. That's the clear indication. That's the most important thing which we can do to develop our own military industrial complexes. We have to just remain steadfast on that option. Though the challenges would come when we might be tempted for the all right reasons, none of them is wrong reason, to go beyond that and say that IDDM is fine, but we need to do something else also. So there we have to be guarded and see that IDDM should remain our choice of procurement and choice of development new product. Obviously, not everything can be developed on day one. It will take years and years. Even all these developed countries took many years to master certain technologies. And after having mastered those technologies, they safeguarded very well. And that's why they kept on safeguarding and improving it. That's why they are where they are. So we have made a choice, good choice, I must say excellent choice, and we need to continue with the choice. And then surely these military industrial complex would develop, which would have huge strength, not only in manufacturing, but also designing new products, designing and developing new product. And associated with that would be to develop and invest pure sciences, because without pure sciences, many of these things may not happen. And our institutes who are working in pure sciences, IITs, IC Bangalore type institute or Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, laboratories, physics, etc., chemical laboratory, etc. They're working in the pure science. We need to continue to work with them, and probably we need to work with them much more vigorously than what we have been doing in the past, so that they can also carry out the research in the area where we are interested, and we can also use the research which they have done in the past. That connect need to be strengthened, and third angle need to bring is the industry should also be brought nearer to them. The engine story is well known. I mean, it's require efforts, and we have to sustain efforts. Sometimes we might be successful in a projected time frame. Sometimes we may not be successful in the projected time frame, because projected time frame is also ours. A person who is a beginner is projected that in next 5 years, like that, okay, I'm not a swimmer, but I decide that I should be able to swim in a month. But from which data? Data is that either my coach must have told me, or I must have seen some other people who must have learned swimming in 1 month. But does that mean that I would be able to do in 1 month? I may do in 15, 20 days. I may do in 2 to 3 months. So the requirement is that I continue to learn that. I continue to do that, and so that I will end up learning swimming. Similarly, in development of new technology and including engine, we would be successful. We will continue to do that.
Okay, and one quick follow-up question, since you'd mentioned space. We have to. Okay, we done? Yeah, time. Huh. Oh my! I was quite happy to be done, and I'm sure Mr. Kumar must be rushing back. But yeah, just one quick question on this space thing that you had mentioned. And if you take a look at the space example, one of the things they've done, and even atomic energy is now opening up, is that the private sector has been called in to build rockets, to own rockets and build satellites, and they've opened up the entire space sector when earlier it was primarily with the Indian Space Research Organization. Do you see parallels in the defense sector, where we do have DRDO and had for a long time a monopoly on a lot of these systems, but is being asked to open up, and of course there's going to be resistance on that front, as we can see. What we You're laughing already. What is your approach in terms when we're talking of this military-industrial complex? How much do you think the private sector should step forward into making critical armaments, and us trusting them to do that on this front?
This is two part of your question. One is that how much private industry should be coming in manufacturing the, and second part was DRDO. So I think DRDO is opening up, and they have already opened up quite a bit. TDF and Dare to Dream and DCPP, they're involving private sector. Certainly they would open up more and more. So when they are able to develop the systems to safeguard or to understand how to work in a collaborative manner with the private R&D. About manufacturing by private sector, already private sector has been given a level playing field. There's no more any reservation for any public sector or something like that. Somebody who has
Except in critical areas.
Not even critical area. If
some of the PSUs are still.
I don't think they're getting preference just because they are PSU. Maybe they're getting preference because they have only developed that system. Right now, Challenger is not there. So it's not that Challenger is debarred. Is that somebody else is not there? That's why they're doing it. It's like early mover advantage which they're having right now. It's going to dissipate in coming years. It's not going to remain forever. So the numbers also bear it out. The 1,50,000 crore annual production which I spoke about now, almost 24-25% of that is coming from the private sector, which is increasing over the year. I'm sure it's going to increase, and the private sector would have main role to play in these military industrial complex.
One question, I'll permit in the sense, and then we have to wind out because the other speakers, you had raised your hand, Ambassador.
Thank you, sir. Just one, in fact, quick question. You talked about critical gaps. Yogendra Kumar, former ambassador. Critical gaps, you identify critical gaps in manufacture of hardware. So my question actually is, at our current state of capabilities in terms of time and scale, I mean, how would you assess that? And compare and connected with that, the integration new technology, what should be the nature, the form of integration new technology to the existing hardware that we have, which will actually amount to a game changer? And my second question, if I may be allowed to, the data centers. We're talking about the AI or cloud AI, where you actually have custom-based LLMs. So for example, I mean, like the Chinese have developed LLMs, classified LLMs for their security and for the defense sector, defense ministry, which means that a Chinese general might be able to have a profile of, let's say, our general who's facing him at a critical moment, profile the sense of response time, psychology, and so on and so forth. So I'm wondering, these kind of challenges or these two questions, what do you think about this?
Very difficult question, Ambassador. And second question is very specific, and I'm probably not aware of any specific development in that regard. Exactly, this falls in the domain of the people who have to handle these situations. So I'm not aware of that. Let me confess that. First part, the way I understood is that you are saying that how to integrate newest technologies in the existing systems, existing hardware, to become a game changer. So there's two things which are very easily comes in my mind is that integrating their capability. It's like if you're fighting with one thing and you are not aware rest of the 100 things what they're doing and what they're seeing. So it's a very limited ability which you have. But if that one thing which is fighting, one equipment which is responding also knows what my other hundreds of equipment seeing and what they can do, it would be force multiplier. That's why it's called network-centric approach of whatever Again, I'm using this, whatever my speech also say, because I really don't remember that exact word. But what it essence means that all of them are contributing to a decision matrix, and all of them are taking part in the decision matrix. So it's a huge force multiplier. And this can be done with the existing equipment using the new technology, latest technologies. Second is that to improve the precision of the existing equipment. And probably they saw in 70s, the Americans did it. Whatever I learned somewhere, they integrated chips in their the bombs, etc., to improve the precisionness of that. So obviously, existing equipment precision can be improved by having integrating new technology. Thank you very much.
Well, I think we have to close this session. I'm sorry, I know a lot of questions. Probably when you go outside, you can answer some of them if they're there. But ladies and gentlemen, let's give Mr. Sanjeev Kumar a very, very warm round of applause for this highly pragmatic and insightful speech. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Kumar.
So with these few words, I now have great pleasure in inviting Mr. Baba Kalyani to kindly deliver the valedictory address. And he's been kind enough to agree to take a couple of questions, though that's rather unconventional. I convinced him to do that. Yes. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Chinoy. Air Chief Marshal Chaudhary, Air Marshal Tiwari, distinguished members of the Armed Forces, Services, Administration, and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. You know, after hearing for the last about 1.5 hours, starting with Air Marshal Tiwari's address, what he talked about in terms of creating a network of a service that can recognize what's flying in our airspace. After the 1995 Purlia arms, whatever happened, that's extremely impressive and I feel very safe flying in the Indian Air. So, you know, it's amazing what people can do if you are challenged. We heard the lady from Ukraine talk about how the transition in the Ukrainian war happened from 2014 to 2022 and from 2022 to now. And there are a lot of lessons about this that we have to learn. Last Monday, the 3rd of November, we had the Viksit Bharat session in where the Honorable Prime Minister was there and gave a speech about how his vision of Viksit Bharat can be achieved. And we had a small panel, 7 of us. I was one of the panelists in that. And I was asked, we had 3 questions that we all had to talk about for 3-4 minutes each. It wasn't long speeches. But the last question was, in one word, can you explain what is required to be done in India to make this happen? So when my turn came, I said trust. I think this is something that we lack very badly in this country. And let me talk a little more about it. I don't want to talk about my company and what we do. We do a lot of things, not only artillery guns. We have been able to, we first designed our own gun, then we designed, along with DRDO, the ATAC, which is probably the most advanced artillery gun on this planet today. It's software driven, it's fully autonomous. You can have 20 guns working autonomously with single control. And we have many other platforms. We have almost 10 different platforms that we have designed. And the beauty of that was that I just picked up young engineers from our forging business and I put them on this job and gave them a mission. And this is what makes things happen. If you are able to convince a group of people that this is required, this is important for the country, this is important for the country's defense, then they do anything and everything to make that happen. And that's, I think, the example that Air Marshal Tiwari gave about what the Air Force is doing. But most impressive for me was what I heard from the lady from Ukraine. Because here is where, and I know some Ukrainians because we are working with some Ukrainian companies in another area. Here is where a group of young people, middle-aged people, engineers, scientists, got together on their own, created products to defend their own country, and went on the front line to deploy those products. And their forces deployed those products. In short, that's what really happened. And that is the best example of a civil-military fusion. You need civil-military fusion to do anything right. But to create a civil-military fusion, you need to create trust. And this is one thing that we lack in our country very badly. Our processes, procedures, whether it's acquisition procedures, whether it's, after you produced a product, the testing procedures. All kinds of procedures which are antiquated, which just don't need to exist. I don't understand. We built the ATAX gun. We built a lot of guns. We exported 100 guns to Europe last year, and including the ATAX. And now the Army wants us to get our ATAX tested on the FOPM. And the FOPM definition in India is, after you get an order, then only you can place orders for raw materials that you require. You cannot buy your raw materials before. How antiquated is this process? You don't have trust in a company that is doing your work. We have worked with the MOD and the Indian Army for this for the last 8-9 years. Is exactly the data that was shown in the Ukrainian system, 120 months to get product certified and bought, which was then reduced to 22 months. So we got to get rid of these things. And the underlying theme behind all this is lack of trust. And we got to get this lack of trust out of the system. The second point is that what is Atmanirbhar? Ambassador, I talked about Atmanirbhar. I think there was a lot of discussion from what I have seen. I watched some of the sessions yesterday online. And we discussed this even when the Honorable Prime Minister addressed us in Bharat Mandapam on last Monday. What is Atmanirbhar? And what is Viksit Bharat? The Honorable Prime Minister has given a call that India needs to be a fully developed nation by 2047, India at 100. Now, to be a fully developed nation, he's also put some targets. We need to take our GDP to something like $30 trillion. Okay, we may be plus minus 5, it doesn't matter. But from where we are today, 4 trillion to 30 trillion, we're talking about a big jump. How is this going to happen in the next 22 years? We have 22 years more to make this happen. We are just about putting the policies in place for all the things we should have done 20 years ago. Whether it's the policy of creating the AMCA, the 5th generation fighter. And I was really happy to hear from you, Air Marshal, that you have a lot of technical people from the Air Force, and we have also bid for the AMCA. And if we ever get that program, that's where I'm going to go to get your technical manpower. Because you need this. Everywhere in the world, it is the military that works with industry to create whatever products you want to create. It's only in India that, there's so much of distrust that nobody wants to work with industry to create this. And I think we got to get this distrust out of the system. The second thing I want to talk a little bit about, I'll give you an example of Nokia. You heard of Nokia. Nokia was the first company that created the smartphone before 2007. The entire smartphone technology was with Nokia, which nobody else had. Apple didn't have it. Google didn't have it. None of those people had it. Now, why did Nokia fail? There's a very nice article by a Harvard professor, which has come in the Harvard Review, as to why Nokia failed. And Nokia failed because the CEO of Nokia started distrusting his own people. And the morale of his organization went down very rapidly. As a result of which, he had people who were only yes men who were telling him things that he liked. There was nobody who was telling him what is wrong with the organization. It was a matter of 2-3 years that Nokia lost all the advantage that it had in smartphones. If you look at what makes a program successful, it is 5% strategy, it is 95% execution. Now, what is execution? Execution is all about people. It's not about technology. It's 5% technology. It's 95% people. People who are passionate, people who are ready to do things, people who are ready to make things happen. Now, in our company, we started with artillery guns. Then we went on to naval systems. I mean, today we build ships. Navy has so many shipyards and they build ships there. But what do they actually build? They only build the vessel body. The entire drive system of the ship comes from abroad. The guns on the ship come from abroad. Nobody is able to make this here. And we have this propensity in this country, especially in the system, that first you have to go to a public sector to ask them to make something. So Navy gave an order to one of the public sector units 20 years ago to make the guns. There are two guns on a naval ship. There's a 30mm gun, which fires at a very fast rate, and there is a 76mm gun. The Navy has decided not to go for the 127mm, which is the bigger gun that many American ships and European ships use. But till today, nobody can make this gun. So we have taken up the challenge. Our 30mm gun will be ready in March, and the 76mm actually has gone for firing to Balasore. Now, these are the kind of things are easily possible in this country. You crowdsource innovation. I'll give a different meaning to the civil military fusion. Crowdsourcing innovation. You've heard of crowdsourcing of funding, money. Mr. Obama, in his election, he actually got elected because he was able to crowdsource funding from a lot of people. Crowdsourcing innovation is the biggest advantage India has. This country has a very large young population. Our demographic dividend, and they're all educated. Many of them are engineers, STEM graduates, and they can make amazing things happen. And we need to start figuring out how to create a system. I mean, this is something for you to look at. Crowdsourcing innovation. And a lot of innovations can be crowdsourced. I mean, drones is a good example. All these thousands of drones flying in formation. These are all young people who are able to create that technology. It's not simple to get 5,500 drones flying in formation. So look at India, believe in India, believe that you can do it. That is Atmanirbharta. Yes, you need collaborations, you need to work with the rest of the world, you need to do all those things. But real Atmanirbharta is the ability to make things with your own knowledge and your own technology. And I think we have a huge pool of knowledge. We have some 800,000 engineers that come out of our institutions every year. We have these amazing IITs. I made a visit to IIT Madras a couple of weeks ago. And I was simply amazed to see the level of technology that is there in their incubation centers. There is one incubation center that is making a space rocket, Agnikul, and many, many other incubation centers. I mean, the whole 5G program came out of an IIT. So there are things that we can do which we still believe in our minds that it can't be done. And we have to figure out mechanisms to do it. But the fundamental mechanism that we have to figure out is how to create trust. How does one Indian believe in another Indian? How does the system believe in companies, in the private sector? because you have kept the private sector out for till 2014. So we're talking about out of the 75 years, almost 60 odd years, you have kept the private sector out of the system. So it's a massive change in terms of mindset. It's a massive change in terms of how we think. It's a massive change in terms of our processes, decision-making process. And unless those change, I'm afraid we won't make the progress that we want to make. And my last few words are that there is capability in this country. There is technology in this country. There are people who can make things, fantastic products, fantastic innovations. We must learn how to tap this, and we must create this force in the service of our nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baba Kalyani, for your scintillating remarks, as always, very perceptive. And I think that big takeaway that we have is how to engage in crowdsourcing innovation from this great country of ours, which has so much talent. And a great deal of the talent is actually within the armed forces, where far too many men and women leave service very young and therefore are not fully utilized in terms of their expertise. So hopefully you and others will also use that. Mr. Baba Kalyani has agreed to take a few questions. As I told you, it's unconventional. After the valedictory address, we're not going straight to the vote of thanks by Colonel Vivek Chadha, my colleague, who is, by the way, Colonel Chadha has worked very hard to put this whole thing together. So on my behalf, I want to do my little vote of thanks to you, Colonel Vivek Chadha, and your excellent team at MPIDSA. So let me begin with, yes, Colonel Rajneesh, please, also of our MPIDSA stock.
Sir, in the United States, they have recently announced that CEOs of 4 top defense companies would be appointed as lieutenant colonels in the army, and they would bring certain expertise to the government. Assuming that you are also appointed as in that particular position in the MOD, what is it that that's why I prefixed it by assuming that you get a similar position in the MOD and the services. What is it that we can expect that you would deliver, sir? And also, second part of the question is, what is that enabling environment you would expect the services and the MOD to give you so that it's a win-win situation for both?
Twist it around, not Lieutenant Colonel, Field Marshal. So now let's get his views.
Let me answer this another way. I have a lot of friends in the US in the defense business. And many of them, matter of fact, we are working with almost half a dozen companies. That's part of the collaborative process in many systems. We are doing a lot of undersea systems for the Navy. Very sophisticated, very complex. But since we have a large coastline and we need to defend our coastline and underwater systems because there are a lot of nasty guys running around our coastlines. And 2, 3 of these companies, one has an admiral who is the CEO, a retired admiral as a CEO. One has a general who is a CEO. So there are, in the US, it's a very common practice that retired service people go and set up businesses. And because they are the ones who have tremendous knowledge of what is required and how to make it happen because they've been handling all those equipments. They know what the next steps have to be. And it's amazing what they do. This is a company in Connecticut. And, Connecticut coast has the largest shipbuilding yards of the US Navy, the submarine yard, the warship yards. And they make this equipment. It's called Sea Picket, which puts an array, radar array on the ocean floor. and gets signals from there, and then transmits the signal via satellite to a station which we are creating now in Vizag, where data will come in, and then we have to send that data to a particular place in the NSCS and analyze that data ourselves. So this is the kind of technologies we are all working with. And they are these people that who bring this knowledge into the system. Now, bringing a civilian like me to with a whatever badge, title, or whatever you want to call it, is not going to work. I think I'm good at where I am. I'm doing a job where it needs to be done. I can make products for our nation to keep it safe to whatever extent we can make. But I think that's the wrong concept, in my opinion. The best people suited for the job are here, right here.
But perhaps it could work for startups and younger people who own their own businesses and not the likes of you. I mean, I'm talking about a younger crowd. But we take your point.
Already enough platforms that have been created. For example, there is a Prime Minister's PM STAC, Prime Minister's Science, Technology, Innovation Forum committee. I am a member of that committee. I've been for many years now. I'm the only industry person who is the member of that committee. And there are many secretaries to the government. There are some professors from the US, Indian professors who are settled there, who are on that committee. And today that committee is headed by Professor Ajay Sood. But they do remarkable work, and we do remarkable work in the committee. All this thinking, long-term thinking, strategic thinking of what is required to be done, nothing to do with defense, but at a national level.
Ambassador Yogendra Kumar?
Mr. Kalyani, you actually been a tailblazer as we have been following the trajectory of the growth of your firm and your own leadership. My question actually is a little general. You keep hearing, it's a common thing, we talk about Viksit Bharat and whatnot, but our investment as a proportion of the GDP is very low in R&D. And most of it actually is government-funded R&D. So where do you think the private sector, and some of our private sector, actually, they are MNCs, the MNCs of global import and global heft. Why is it that let's say, our industry leaders, why are they not actually putting, let's say, comparable amount of money as is being put in the US? Thank you.
I agree with you. I have no disagreement on that. But I'm not part of that system. Okay? I've been investing in R&D for the last 15 years, defense R&D. And I still haven't supplied one single item to the Indian Armed Forces. All right? My entire defense business today is exports. I am the largest producer of artillery ammunition in the world on this planet. Okay? Bigger than the United States, by the way. So we have tremendous capability to do things. Of course, we now got orders from Indian Army to supply guns, 180 guns. We got order to supply a small arms, a carbine, a very large quantity. But that will probably get into production by first quarter of next year with all the processes and everything that's involved. We are working with the Indian Navy on some deep sea systems, what I talked about. And that's largely happening out of the emergency procurement process because that's become a simpler process to make things happen. Because the whole system works less than 22 months. As a matter of fact, 2 months. You have a product, you go for a trial, you prove your product, and that's it. If it works, then you're competitive. You can get business with that. Similarly, we have got some drone business coming in. We have a very large aerospace division in our company. We work for all the 3 big engine manufacturers, Rolls-Royce, Pratt & Whitney, and another US company that makes engines. And except for Safran, we make everybody's engine components, turbine blades, shafts, rotors, all kinds of stuff. I was involved in the Kaveri engine program 30 years ago. I still remember those days. I was much younger in those days. I did a lot of hard work, produced the blades and the disc for the Kaveri engine. It worked, but the engine never worked. And that's a sad state of affairs that we have not been able to develop an engine. If it was given to the private sector 30 years ago, today you wouldn't need to import engines from General Electric.
Sorry, let me add to that query. So now, do you think that it's possible to have a new afterburner to be added to the dry Kaveri engine? Is there any such permutation combination possible?
Don't think you can do that. It's not as simple as that. You have to design a new engine. But designing a jet engine is not rocket science anymore. We are developing small engines. We actually just developed a 45 kg thrust engine for applicating on our drones, long range drones. So we can make drones that can go 800 to 1,000 kilometers with that engine. So this is now approved by ADA and Semilac, which is one of the steps that you have to pass, anything to do with aerospace or aircraft. So it is very simple to do that. But then you got to, the issue here, what is missing here? Trust. Why wasn't the private sector given this job 25, 30 years ago? Why is it today that the government is saying that the fifth generation fighter should be made only by the private sector? And
what are the reasonable chances of India actually having its own fighter aircraft engine? Because the Prime Minister spoken about it on the 15th of August from the ramparts of the Red Fort. And therefore now it's supposed to be in mission mode. And so how do you see it?
it is not happening because we have contracted with Safran to develop the engine. Again, lack of trust.
I have never seen a session, a valedictory session, the last one, that's actually ahead of time. So when I look at the clock here, we actually have a few more minutes and his esteemed presence still with us. I'd like you all to make full use of it. And so if there are others, especially the younger ones who are attending this event, please raise your hand and pose your question. I mean, here's your chance. We have so many people at MPIDSA itself. Interns, any one of you curious about something? I want to thank you also because there was deft handling by former Air Chief that made sure that we ended that other session on time. It comes with precision flying, I guess, force of habit for you. Yogi, you are really in your elements today. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Oh, let me give him a chance. Yeah, Groupie, you worked very hard too, sir.
So aeronautics, unmanned aeronautics is not taking off. We made Panchi, we made Nishant, Rustam 1, Rustam 2. No, my issue is we have been closing many indigenous projects. I studied HTT 34, Marut. We have a history of giving up at certain stage.
I've watched this happen for a long period of time. The same thing happened with artillery guns. The first indigenous artillery gun made after we acquired those Bofors gun in 1984 was a gun called Dhanush. You look at the record with the Indian Army on those, they don't want it anymore. It falls apart, the barrels burst, soldiers have died. I mean, this is the history of our system. But nobody has the guts to say it is not good. Only the army has said it's not good. The army chief has said, they have all said we don't want it anymore. And now they are working with the private sector. And things will change. Now, if this had happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago, things would be very different today in India.
Yeah, Yogi, and then
to take this conversation forward. But you find, on the other hand, when let's say the government sector is challenged, like ISRO, for example, or our nuclear program, these are all developed through the literally, we pulled ourselves by a bootstrap, so to say, or strategic metal, these kind of things. The supercomputer, I mean, when it was denied to us, we actually got it, cryogenic engine. So the point actually that there's something which is missing in the normal run of the PSUs, whereas some of these other, let's say, government-run bodies, I think they delivered amazing results. I'm wondering, how do you interpret this? Thank you.
This exactly amplifies what I say. Now, what is ISRO? ISRO was created by Dr. Baba, taking a rocket on a bicycle, to a launch. Now, that kind of motivated a lot of young people, scientists, people like that, to join ISRO. And ISRO has tremendous autonomy. Nobody interferes with ISRO. Now, which PSU has tremendous autonomy as ISRO? Now, if you have autonomy, ISRO is like a private sector organization. Now, they have created InSpace, which is run by a good friend of mine, Dr. Goenka, who used to be running Mahindra and Mahindra making automobiles. He runs InSpace, which is an arm of ISRO, where ISRO technology is now given to private sector to launch rockets. And these two guys who have come up from that, Agni Cool and one more in Hyderabad, and there are many more coming up in this area. They are going to use, and they're going to be the next, what you see in the US, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and everybody launching their own rockets. So it is easy to make this happen. It's not very difficult.
So can we do to DRDO what has been done to ISRO? Do you see any parallels there?
Don't underestimate DRDO, please. I have worked with DRDO for almost 30 years. They have tremendous capability. They have tremendously intelligent scientists. They have great knowledge. Again, the problem is this, system that is controlled by a system on top of it, and you have something called GFR. Now, you put a GFR on a scientist's head or a scientist's back, he can't do science. He has to worry more about, how many rupees he has spent where and what, how do you account for it? Now, the first time, after repeatedly telling the Honorable Prime Minister, he has now made this, somebody talked about R&D in the private sector. He has now created an R&D fund of 1 lakh crores only for the private sector. Okay? And there is no GFR. And the procedure of how to access that fund was just announced last Monday. So we are moving ahead, and you will see tremendously fast progress with all these things happening. The blue ocean strategy that was unleashed with creating a shipping industry in India, the AMCA strategy to create the 5th generation fighter, and the Army's got the next generation FICVs, tanks, everything happening. A lot of things are happening in this country.
Just pose one more question. I'm kind of, curating this more like a fireside chat now with your indulgence. Yes, of course, yes. Just a quick thing about what took us so long to actually create, an infantry assault, rifle for ourselves.
The problem is DRDO designed a rifle called INSAS. It's a very good design. But then they gave it to the ordnance factory to make it. Have you ever gone to an ordnance factory? The permanent workers in most of these ordnance factories don't work there. They give their job on contract to somebody else. How can you expect to make products?
Just to interject, this talk about how the course of development, especially I'll talk about military aviation. I've been very closely involved in the LCA program, and looking at what China is doing in the aviation sector. They have a long-term focus and they have perseverance. We failed on the Kaveri project, but there were a lot of things we had learned which we could have taken forward, which we didn't. Look at the LCA program. Started, even if you say 90s, in the early 90s, because that's when the funding came. 2016 is when the first squadron actually formed up. In 2010, we were actually ready with the blueprint to make the LCA Mark II. It should have been done at that point of time. We are starting today. And then we are following with AMCA. And who's doing it? It's one same organization called ADA, which has 300, 400 engineers. It is just not possible to hack. So even if private sector gets involved today, it will be largely in manufacturing. So this is where the talent of the country, which needs to crowdsource, and actually we need to beef up such organization, give them independence. Then only we need not to follow sequential processes. It has to be a parallel process. Then only we will reach where we want to go. That's what I wanted to add.
Question, and keep it brief, please. That's the very last one.
It's not a question, just a compliment. Baba and I, we go back to 3-4 decades. Every time I met him, he looks younger.
Nice way to.
But the program for 1 week, you know.
Well, we're almost at 6:35, and I can simply say that it's been an extra. Oh, there's a hand going up now. All right, you got 30 seconds to pose your question, please.
So the Kalyani group has delivered ready-to-fill shells to the OFB for a while now. Do you think you would ever produce high energetic materials on your own, given the strict explosive act policies that India has?
Your first assumption is incorrect. We have not given OFB ready to fill shells. We only gave 100,000 shells during the Kargil operation because Indian Army ran short of shells and they had no way to get it. So the chief scientific officer of the Defense Ministry came to my office suddenly one day and said, I want you to make 100,000 shells. And here is the order. You put your price and I will sign the order. And in 8 months, we made 100,000 shells and delivered empty shells. Today, we manufacture roughly about 50,000 shells a month, about more than 500,000 a year of different types, including the L-15, L-19, and now we are working on the M795, which is the US latest ammunition, because even the United States doesn't have this capacity. They are finding it very difficult to build capacities. So we export 500,000 shells all over the world. It goes to Europe, Italy, France, Germany, UK, in many countries. Of course, we know where it lands up in the end, so that's a different issue. But that's what we do. We are now setting up an energetics plant, which will make explosives, TNT, RDX, propellant in Andhra Pradesh. Mr. Chandrababu Naidu, the Honorable Chief Minister, has already given us 1,000 acres of land. We've taken possession of the land. And in 2 years, we'll have our energetics plant ready, which will make all the modern energetics that are required, not only for shells, but for rockets and even propellants for space.
Simply a very big thank you, Mr. Baba Kalyani, and I request all of you to applaud him.